Hello everyone, and welcome to another live session here at Design Cuts. And we are here today with the wonderful Tom Warne. Hi Tom, how are you doing?
Hello, yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Hello everyone.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited about this session because what will you be teaching? What will you be teaching today? So that I can say I know nothing about it because I don't know anything about this subject in Photoshop.
So the title of this session is How to Illustrate Jumping Figures in Photoshop. So what I'm going to be doing is taking one of my illustrations and essentially kind of taking it apart for you and showing how I ink, how I color, and just giving you a little bit of a sense of my working process, and just really showing how I would go about really making a kind of dynamic figure, and hopefully showing how a static figure can still have bags of movement and life to it. That's the plan anyway. We'll see.
Awesome. And I believe you're using your amazing Invincible ink brush pack
That's
to do the demo in. And also, I think you're giving us a sneak peek to your new pack that's coming out as well.
Indeed. Yeah, just a little sneak peek at the end. It's still in the works, but yeah, hopefully you guys might be interested to see it.
Awesome.
So what I thought I'd do to just kick the session off really is just to sort of show you how first of all I go about thinking about sort of figure reference, because obviously that's sort of integral to any kind of figurative work you're doing. And there's a couple of ways that I do this. This way is I've got these sort of manga figures that I got online, and they're they're posable, and you can sort of put them into the pose you need and then photograph them. What I'll do actually is I'll just turn the mask off so you can see how they work. So it's got like a clamp around the waist and a little platform, and they're really good little bits of kit to help you just get your pose, and sometimes if I'm up against it, I'll trace it. I like to try and draw freehand if I can, just to sort of keep my eye in and practice that side of things, but yeah, it's not always possible. And obviously the other way is so I'll just close that down, don't save. The other way is obviously just using figure reference that I find online. So I find that places like Unsplash, Pexels, things like that, they're just a treasure trove for loads and loads of figurative work. And these are the 4 figures that I used to help me compose the piece of work that I'm doing now. So I just wanted to sort of give you a bit of an insight into how I go about thinking about this. And I'll also, from time to time, sort of take photos of myself, which is suitably embarrassing, and they'll hopefully never see the light of day.
I mean, those 3D figures look awesome for just conceptualizing, multiple figures in a 3D space.
They're so helpful. Yeah. They were a Christmas present one year, and I use them a fair old bit. Cool. I thought what I'd do. So just in terms of time, I've already done the sketch. So this is the figure that I'm going to be working from, and I'm going to ink and then I'm going to color as well. So I'm a bit of a obsessive with layers. As you can see, I've got a huge amount of layers. Hopefully those will become obvious later on with what I'm doing. But I'm on my ink. I've got my sketched a layer here, and I've got my inking layer. And just for reference, I'm using a Wacom Intuos 4 tablet. So I'm right-handed, and then on my left hand, I always have my hand on the keyboard for the keyboard shortcuts, that kind of thing. So yeah, what I will do then is,
and if you want to maximize Photoshop at all, Tom,
yeah,
just sure. No
worries. Cool. How's that? Is that
Yeah, that's good. Cool.
Okie dokie. Right. So what I tend to do, and obviously having a tablet's really helpful because the key function that I use, probably more than any other, is the rotate function, because I sort of really feel it's important to move your figure around, because that's going to help you when you're inking in particular. It's going to really help you to get the best angles for your brush strokes, and it's all about the thickness of the lines, that kind of thing. So I really like to kind of move the figure around and figure out, okay, how am I going to approach this particular stroke? The other thing is, the very, very important thing, as I'm sure all of you know very well, is the light source. And so for this composition, the light source is a bit of an odd one. It's down here. So all the light's going to be coming from bottom to top. So that will dictate, obviously, the colors, but also the inking. So one of the things I like to do is on the edge that is kind of nominally going to be in shadow, I like to try and do a thicker, I like to try and do a thicker line. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I'm going to probably be deleting a lot of lines if I don't like them. So you'll have to bear with me. I'll try and be quick.
I'm pretty sure that you're in good company with almost, if not everyone here watching today.
The struggle is real.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll sort of think about where the light source is coming from, and then try and do the thicker lines at the top. But always, I'm always after, and this is obviously just a personal taste thing. I love the kind of thick to thin. Is that nice taper is always what I'm after, and that was
nicely organic.
Yeah, that's right. And because I love working with brush pens, in analog when I'm offline, and this is why I wanted to make this pack, was to really just be able to get the same effects digitally. Hopefully I find it does the job. But
that's interesting. I think we find all the best packs are made, or a lot of the best packs are made by people who do analog and digital, because obviously the analog gives the digital a lot of inspiration, doesn't it? And people really want to then make it really real,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so when I was making this, it was sort of all made by hand and scanned in and everything, and lots of paint and pens and that kind of thing. So hopefully you can see there the thicker line at the top that's kind of nominally going to be in shadow, and then the thinner line here. It's sort of little tricks to sort of fool the eye really into thinking there's that kind of contrast going on there.
Yeah, it's already getting depth and it's just outline.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, that's the dream.
Living the dream.
Yeah. So hopefully. So as I'm going, I sort of try to, obviously the pencil's a guide, but it's not going to harden fast. It's if I kind of go over the lines, it's not the end of the world. But again, swinging around to kind of get a better angle. I used to have a previous role. I used to have a creative director who would sort of really advocate doing this kind of thing. So lots of little lines to make a line. And I can totally see the benefit of that. But at the same time, personally, there's nothing like, if you can do it in one hit, and I'm going to try now, I probably won't. There you go. Doing it in one hit. I think that's a much nicer.
I guess with the little lines, you can't get rhythm.
That's right. I just think it's got a much nicer line quality to it.
Sure.
But each to his own. Sometimes you have to do it that way.
Yeah. I think I agree with you, Tom. Shh, we won't tell him or her.
Yeah. Yeah. Just then that's already happened. I find the reason I do this rotating all the time is because I end up sort of my wrist goes into weird shapes, and it's just not very organic. You don't get a nice curve to the line, so that's why I like to keep
rotate.
Keep rotating him. And actually, one thing I need to do, which I haven't done yet, is just take a step back. Again, that was old art school trick taught by my teachers, was always take a step back, just look at how it's looking.
Stand up, step back a bit. Really good.
Look at your line weights and then get back in.
Very cool.
Yeah. I was thinking about this actually while I was prepping for this session, and I remember years ago going to an exhibition of the pop artist Roy Lichtenstein.
Yeah,
and he had an easel that could rotate, so he would rotate his paintings, which I always thought was really cool.
That's really cool. Well, you do see pretty much everyone do it. Everyone who comes on DC, or most of the artists that come on to show or designers show their work, or in Procreate, or whatever they're doing, they'll rotate it to get a nice, comfortable arc with whatever they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I know people sort of will flip it as well. So that's not something I do very often, but it's always helpful.
Yeah.
So
it's actually really refreshing seeing this kind of thing done in Photoshop.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. I mean, I'm sort of Photoshop born and bred. That was kind of been using it for absolutely donkey's years, and only just really now starting to learn about Affinity, and Procreate as well is relatively new. I see some of the incredible things that people like Ian Barnard and
for sure
are doing, and it's just incredible. So I'm still learning when it comes to Procreate. So but it's an amazing bit of kit, isn't it?
It isn't. Yeah, it's just staggering.
Yeah. Okay. So thicker line up the top here.
Nita was just saying that she's loving the brushes. I'm loving them too. They've got a really naturalistic quality. And they're down there at the bottom. If anyone has to have a click and have a look at them.
Thank you. That's really lovely to hear, Nita. It's
That's-
yeah, I was really keen to sort of. Oh, hang on, my computer's hanging. Am I going to get Beach Ball of Doom? There we go. Right.
I hate it when that happens.
Hang on,
Mine told me that I'd used 90% of my memory earlier on and that was when I opened Photoshop.
I think yesterday.
I think the lights flickered at that point.
Yeah. I actually yesterday deleted some sort of large files and stuff because I was getting the Beach Ball yesterday.
I think that's probably exactly what I need to do as well.
Yeah,
It's
it's amazing, isn't it?
This doesn't bode well. Right, close in design, open this, close that, do this.
Because it's all the it's sort of all the variations and iterations. Like I think it's a bit of a sort of designer's cliche to to have this is the final version of this copy, and then final, and then final.
Yeah, and then it's
so
bigger and bigger and bigger, and
that's right. Yeah, but yeah, in terms of the brushes themselves, I was really keen to sort of try to have a real mix. So there's some that are really smooth, nice ink, and then others which I don't like that. Others that I wanted to almost look like the ink was bleeding into the paper a little bit. When you've got quite a sort of rough substrate, and I always kind of really like that effect. And a lot of the illustrators that I really love, who work with pen and paper, it has such a beautiful quality to it. I don't know if you guys, I can't see the chat, but I don't know if you guys have come across an illustrator called Yuko Shimizu. She does work for sort of the New Yorker and does some comic stuff here and there, but just a phenomenal illustrator. She's kind of wildly popular, and her stuff is gorgeous.
I'll see what everyone says in the chat for you. I'm afraid I was actually geeking out in another window. I've actually got your brush set open, and I was looking at it whilst you were talking.
Right.
So I took my own advice. I clicked the green button and I'm looking at the product.
There you go.
In more detail.
Cool. So
that's great.
I'll take another step back. So what I do on my pen, I have the two click keys. I have them as undo and zoom. So those are the two that I kind of use more than anything else. And I'm a big fan of the old shortcuts. It's I try not to waste time going up to the.
For sure, Adrian, one of the designers that I work with, is a real sort of shortcut whiz and programs all hers in Photoshop. She's like, does this with this and this with that.
Yeah, that's it.
Good.
So yeah, sorry, I'll try and rattle through this.
I love the rip in the knee there. That's very cool.
Thank you. It's
really cool.
Quite the hipster, this guy.
Yeah.
So, that's right.
I'm way too old to be cool now.
Oh well, exactly.
It's all about the Antiques Roadshow for me, and slippers,
same,
and drinking hot cocoa on a Sunday night, that kind of thing.
I feel your pain, mate. I'm exactly the same. Yeah. So yeah, just trying it all the way through, just trying to think about which edge is hitting light and which edge is sort of in the in shadow and stuff. So I'll just quickly do these.
Very cool.
Through these, it's always really fun I find to sort of ink, the kind of ruffled clothing here and all these sorts of lines. You can just, it's just so much fun to ink this stuff.
I think what's super cool is just how much movement and how dynamic you get it to look with so few lines.
Oh, well,
and how much it actually looks like the material that it actually is. It looks like a kind of a jean fabric,
Oh well, I mean that's lovely to hear. Thank you. Yeah, it's I just love inking. I've always been the style, because I'm a real comic nerd. And hang on, he's hung again. Come on, he's thinking about it. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a real comic nerd, and so I've always this type of work has just been sort of in my bones ever since I was a kid, really. And I've worked in a lot of different ways, but this seems to be. I'm sure be interesting to hear. I'm sure a lot of you guys who are watching, you tend to have one way that just feels, just natural, doesn't it? And you can sort of, it comes naturally to you. And so this type of stuff, it tends to come a bit more naturally to me.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I'm a real kind of pared back illustration kind of person. I really like simplistic shape illustrations and building up with shapes and form.
Is that sort of vector stuff you like to
do? More vector stuff, yeah. Very illustrator based.
That's it. I mean, again, there are some amazing artists out there who do vector based stuff.
Although now I seem to spend far too much time doing email.
That's That's the danger.
And writing,
yeah, that's the danger.
It is the danger. All of a sudden, you're like, hang on a minute, 90% of my day is doing email.
I know. Yeah. Oh, it's dangerous. It's dangerous.
It is
I know
dangerous.
a lot of creatives. They say, right, I'll do all my creating in the morning, and then after lunch, that's when I'm a bit tired, and got that post lunch sort of snooze type feeling going on.
Yeah,
that's when I'll do my emails.
Whatever you do, don't go to the pub and have a pint. That's lethal.
Oh yeah, no, don't do that. There'll be no productive work after that.
Nope.
Cool. So I think I'm getting to
Alex is. Oh, actually, I can ask that at the end, because I know you wanted to have the questions at the end.
I'm happy to.
It's just something that's popped up in the chat, and Alex has said, would it be easier to do this kind of illustration work in Illustrator?
You absolutely can, and it's one of those things really that obviously that you can get. I know there are really great brushes out there which work in vector, and you of course you could absolutely do that. But it's just a personal taste thing, really. I
wonder if the feeling would be just ever so slightly different as well.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think there is a chance actually, because it's sort of I just like, for me, I'm just a bit old school really. I like the flaws. I like the kind of the hand drawn.
Just a bit more hand draw, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
it feels like.
Sorry, I'm just going to redo that. Yeah, but that being said, I don't want to sort of
oh no way!
Talk down vector, because
vector's awesome.
I mean, you see some of the products that Design Cut sells. You just think
absolutely.
It's truly amazing what vector can do these days. So
yeah. I mean, I have to be honest. I haven't spent that much time playing as much time playing with vector brushes as I have with bitmap.
Likewise, it's I've downloaded some and kind of used them, but for previous projects, but not huge amounts. I thought I'd just mention actually, I forgot to say it earlier on, just something I try to do when I'm doing these sorts of illustrations is faces and hands. I try and keep relatively clear of kind of lots of heavy lines and rendering, just because they're so when you look at a figure, they're so much of the life comes from the hands and comes from the face, so you almost don't want to clutter them up too much. Just a few key lines I find. Obviously it depends what your style of working is. You may be doing highly rendered stuff, and obviously that's totally cool, but personally I've over the years I've tried to sort of pull back a bit and not do too much heavy rendering on faces and hands, because they're just so expressive, and if you're trying, as this session's all about, trying to kind of use the body to kind of show movement and dynamism and expression, then it's good to sort of keep that stuff. Cool. So I've got my outline there, and actually I have to confess I cheated just because of time. I've done all of these details ahead of time just to kind of move things along. So once I've done that, I've got my basic inking layer there, my outline, and then what I do is after that I create a new layer and try to remember to name it, because there's nothing worse than scrolling through and trying to remember what everything is. Carry on with my brush. And
if you've ever worked with somebody else's PSDs, I'm sure every designer here has, and you open it and you're like, oh my goodness, great. Or you pass a PSD on to someone and you think, oh, maybe I should have just quickly tidied that up.
I should go easy on them. But what I tend to do is kind of go. I like to keep everything on separate layers, so that if I don't want to kind of ruin this outline. So once I start leaning into it with a bit more ink and a bit more rendering, I've got that as a separate layer. So if I really don't like it or I make a mistake, I haven't messed up my outline. So but I'm sure.
It's really cool, Tom. That's a lot of expression and feeling from a minimal amount of lines.
I'm really liking it. So once I've got my lines, as I say, I'm on my rendering layer, what I tend to do is now just start to think about how I can start to, I'm going to sound incredibly pretentious now, but I look at it a bit like kind of sculpting the form. So using the lines that I've already made, I'm just going to make my brush a wee bit smaller. I use the bracket keys to make my brush bigger and smaller. I just find that much quicker. I try and follow the lines and just look at the marks I've already made and just follow them along. So add a bit more texture, and it's all kind of based on just trying to give this form as much shape and texture as possible. Sorry, my Mac is going really slowly today.
No worries. So you're just
Well,
adding even
sorry,
more
guys.
depth, I guess, by popping those on.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And it just, as much as anything, particularly with clothing, it just helps to sort of give a bit more dynamism and a bit more life to it, I think. I'll do again a little bit on the hand. I don't want to go overboard with the hands because they're so key for expression and for the life of the figure. But yeah, so I've got the shadow up here. So it's a bit of a mixture really of giving it shape, but then also giving the effect of a bit of shadow. And when I come to color, you'll kind of see how all these things, hopefully link up. So yeah, sort of sculpting, looking at the lines. And I think this is where working by hand really helps, because you can get these nice curves where obviously you can do that in vector, but I like to get them by hand personally.
Yeah, there's a few people chatting about trying to use Illustrator more, etc. in the chat, and obviously
Yeah,
it is fantastic because it's resolution independent, so
yeah.
you can blow it up to whatever size you want. So it is a wonderful format, but it does have a little bit different feeling to bitmap.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I think, as I say earlier on, it really is personal taste, isn't it? Great. So I've got a bit more rendering there. What I'll do is I'll just show you, this is how I tend to do hair. So again, thinking about where my shadow and light is, so all the back of his head is in shadow, and just a bit of a quick way of doing it really. And part of the reason I like these brushes is because of the taper. Is what I tend to do is I'll block in, sort of big blob of black like that, and then, a bit more here. And once I've got my kind of blob like that, I'll make the brush a wee bit smaller, and then just kind of, not quite that small, feather it out just in flicks like that. And I just find it's a really quick way of getting quite an effective, still quite graphic, obviously, and stylized, but yeah, just quite a nice quick way of quickly blocking in sort of area of hair there like that. And then just sort of, pushing them together like that, and a few more lines here and there. Cool. So
that's interesting. Bill in the chat saying I feel there's a bit more warmth to pixel brushes. That said, I've created some wonderful vector art in Adobe Illustrator. Yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah.
The more warmth, the grittier feel, that kind of more organic.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, I'm sure we've all experienced, that actually sometimes you get these happy little accidents and these, and actually that sort of the flaw isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's actually sometimes quite nice to have a bit of, it's sort of, I don't know, to use a musical analogy, with like punk music or something, it's okay that it's a bit ragged because that's part of the vibe of it.
Part of it, yeah.
So, yeah, cool. So I'll just add a few more bits and bobs in. So once I've kind of got these areas here, like following the line, I'll just stick a few more lines in, and just so almost to sort of show like, oh, these might be little folds that perhaps we can't really see as well. So and it all just helps to add a bit of life to it.
Nice.
And I'm conscious of time, so I'll try not to take too long.
But, no worries at all. We're
all good.
Time? Yeah, we're all good.
Great. So again, looking at where the shadow is, and just looking at the shape of the leg and how it might go. And this is where reference material is so helpful, because you can look at your, you can go back to your references and just think, oh, okay, how's the shadow falling? It's just so helpful. A lot of the comic artists I really admire, can just conjure these images from their head. And so I've tried to learn to do that, but actually lately I've been realizing and sort of seeing interviews and stuff with a lot of comic artists and illustrators, it's fine to use loads of reference. And so I'm kind of less afraid these days to use a lot of reference materials just to get it looking good. Cool. So I don't think I've missed anything. I reckon I'm just going to stick a few more bits and bobs in here, just a few lines, just to sort of, I like the idea of just showing that maybe this material is kind of ruffling as he's in mid-flight, as it were. Cool. I reckon that's looking pretty good. So
very cool.
Thank you very much. So what I'll do is again, new layer, I'm going to start adding some color now. So if I just move my brushes, actually, what I've done is I've already put together my swatches, and the way I tend to work is I'll get a base color, and then working from that, using the picker tool, I'll sort of have a play around and pick a lighter and a darker color, and they'll be the way I kind of show tone and shading using color. Obviously, that's just my way of working. Some people will pick hundreds of colors, or maybe just one, and it's obviously however you like to work.
Yeah, I've seen some designers using multiply to layer it up and that kind of thing. That works quite well too.
Yeah, that's right. It's really, I'm sort of very conscious that I wouldn't want to kind of be too prescriptive, but this is just how I work. So yeah, what I tend to do is I get my base color. So this is the base color for this hoodie here. I make a big old fat brush just to block in as quick as possible. So this is all, I'm just going to color using the exact same brush as well. Block in all the colors here, and then I'll go in, I'll zoom in a bit more. Do people need me to be zooming in more?
I can see it pretty clearly, yeah. But if anyone would like us to zoom in a bit more, but it's great my end.
Cool. Yeah, just give me a shout.
But do say if anyone, just pop it in the chat if you'd like us to zoom in a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay. So I will probably go over the lines, and again, the perfectionist in me will be crying inside. But I'll have to, for the purposes of time, I'll let it go.
We could say it's part of the style of this piece.
Exactly. Yeah. Why didn't I think of that? I should have just said that. Yeah, it's totally impressionistic. Yeah, it's interesting. I've watched obviously a lot of these Design Cuts live sessions and seen other people. They do what's called flatting. I'm sure a lot of people will be familiar with this, where they use the pen tool, and you point by point, you kind of go around the form and create these flat layers, and then build into them with color. And obviously that's a perfectly fine way of working, and I think that's very common in the comic book world to do that. I think they actually, I found out this fairly recently, they actually have devoted people to sort of do the flatting for the colorists, which is pretty. I think that would be a pretty zen job to just be doing that all day long. But I must admit, I don't like working like that. I tend to just block stuff in by hand, primarily because I really like the pen tool in Illustrator. I really love it in Illustrator, but I find it really hard to use in Photoshop. Maybe it's just me, but
no, I think I know what you mean. It just feels different, doesn't it?
It's not quite as intuitive, I don't think.
Yeah.
But that, again, it's all personal, isn't it?
No, I think I can't remember who told me that there's a different team that works for every bit of software. A different team for a Photoshop, a different team for Illustrator, a different team for XD, and sometimes you feel like these teams don't actually talk to each other.
Yeah, have they talked to each other?
Because you're like, oh, this is really great. This really works great in here. Then you jump into something else expecting it to be really similar, and it's just not.
Yeah, maybe in the break room.
They're all awesome,
they have a chat, but it's funny. There's little things every now and then that you think, you do that in InDesign. Why don't you do that in Illustrator?
Sure.
It's well, I mean, I wouldn't want to criticize these bits.
I want the InDesign team can definitely come around for dinner, because it might even be my favorite bit of software from Adobe. It's just awesome.
It really is amazing, isn't it?
Isn't it brilliant?
I use that for my day job most of the time, and
I love it.
Yeah, it's so intuitive. I learned from a book, and even that kind of quite boring way of learning, it was so intuitive.
I think I moved from Quark Express to InDesign, and it just was crazy, the difference.
Man. I could never get my head around Quark Express at all. I used to have it, and I just gave up on it completely.
Super tricky.
Cool. So I've got my base layer here for my color. So I'm going to select my. Can you see the swatches, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So I've got my shadow here. So again, following my darker outline, following my rendering, I'm just going to start to block in thicker kind of blobs, a bit like I did with the hair. Block in these thicker areas of shadow. And what I try to do is, and it's just a sort of little, I don't know, a little kind of technique that I was taught a while back is to not go all the way to the edge with the shadow, because if you look at a 3D object and you look at the sort of side of the object that's in shadow, if you really look closely, you'll start to see light creeping around the edge again. So it's not, the shadow doesn't go all the way to the edge. And so that's just a little technique to sort of try and hopefully show that this is a 3D object. And again, add some life, add a bit of dynamism, hopefully, to it. So yeah, I'd recommend just experimenting with that. And you can really go crazy and sort of add like a key, almost like a stroke of white, brilliant white, to just really show a high contrast or a really extreme light source. So yeah, it's just a cool,
very cool, Tom. Really cool
technique. So I'll quickly block in all this stuff.
We've moved on from it a little bit, but JR said that the pants shading looks killer.
Oh,
I have to agree.
That's very kind. Oh, I've gone a bit close to the edge there. Again, my perfectionism has taken over. Cool. So I will try and be as quick as I can and block this stuff in.
And Lindsay's kindly saying, or Bill said that it's Lindsay said that showing her age, talking about Quark Express, and Bill says it's leveling up, not aging.
Oh, I love that.
I love that.
I'm having that.
Totally, Bill. We're all leveling up here.
That is fantastic.
I'm definitely doing a lot of leveling up of late. And when I had my daughter, I did extra leveling up.
Extra leveling up. That's pro level. That is
pro leveling up.
That's going pro.
Ultra speedy leveling.
Yeah. Cool. So just carry on. What I've kind of decided with this piece is, because it's quite an extreme light source underneath him, I'm going to do more highlight than shadow. So I'm going to sort of go a wee bit easy on the shadow. So I'll just block that in. And look for these thicker lines and just maybe do a little sort of key line of shadow of a fold there. So all this stuff just helps to give a little bit more life to it. And then when I start to so what I tend to do is I block in, and then when I come to the rendering with the color, hopefully that's where the sort of motion lines and will kind of really start to show themselves. So hopefully that, yeah, you'll start to see that. So again, similar with the rendering, I'll start to just add in a few little tweaks. Even if I've not done a line, I'll just do a few little shadow marks. Again, just to sort of show that, hey, this is a kind of living, breathing form, and there's bits of maybe little folds that perhaps we can't see. They all just help. All this stuff just helps. Cool.
Very cool.
I will create yet another layer, which is going to be, oh no, I tell you what I will do is I'll stick on my shadow layer and I'll go into the rendering straight away. So in fact, actually, what I will do is I'll do a hoodie shadow rendering. Can't type. Rendering layer again. Always just to sort of, as it were, help yourself. If you make a mistake, you think, great, I can go back quickly and change things. So almost identically to these ink marks that I've made, you could get a slightly smaller brush and just start sweep out of those blobs you make. And because you've got a thick to thin line, it the way it sort of comes out of these shadows, it sort of draws everything together and then feathers out. And this personally, I just love to color stuff like this. And you could obviously, loads of people would just leave a clean line there, and on previous stuff I'll do that, but I really love to give these kind of shading lines here. And I think this is where a lot of dynamism and movement can really start to come into a piece.
I guess this is like falling. It does give that movement even more, doesn't it? It gives that feeling that he's shifting.
That's right.
He's moving. We don't know how it's going to end up when he lands. Could be bad. Or he might be like one of those people on Facebook who does that awesome parkour. And,
I know, yeah. Well, this piece was actually, it was kind of the whole reason for me making it is a personal piece, and it was all about just throwing yourself into things. That was the kind of story behind the piece, and I was finding that, I was sort of struggling to kind of know what to create, and a little bit of shiny object syndrome, lots of interesting things to have a go at, but almost getting to the point where I kind of was a bit paralyzed. I didn't know what to draw. And I was chatting to a friend of mine, and she just said, look, create and, enjoy the creative process, and, the outcome will worry about itself. And I thought that was great advice. And then she said, well, why don't you do a piece that's kind of along those lines? So yeah, this is the, hopefully you might have seen in the promo image, it's that kind of running jump, just throwing yourself off the cliff, just thinking, hey, I don't care where I end up, let's just enjoy,
let's get it done.
The adrenaline.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think, and I can't see the chat, hopefully everyone will agree with me, but we all start creativity for fun. It's playing, isn't it? You do this because you love to do it, and it's almost play. It's a form of play. Certainly when you're a kid, it's a form of
play. For sure. I used to take a sketch pad around with me everywhere as a kid and just draw. Wherever I was, I'd just be drawing. That's
right. And it's, I used to sit on do you remember the old type of computer paper? Again, I'm showing my age now, when it was sort of the green lines. The two lines of holes down the edge.
Yeah, those are the ones where you're perforated and you can pull it off.
That's the one. So my mum used to bring that back from work and just sit me on the lounge floor with a load of crayons and just sit and draw Spider-Man for 4 hours.
When I was, I'm not sure I should tell everyone this. I don't know what this says about my psyche, but when I was really little, my mum used to give me a paintbrush and get me to paint the outside fence with water.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I would sit there for ages painting it with water, and it would just dry and I'd just carry on.
That's amazing. I've never heard that.
How to keep your toddler amused.
Yeah, that is some amazing busy work there. Isn't it? Again, you see, this is the parenting pro tips.
I've probably seen my dad doing it. And I was like, I want to go. And she's like, oh, all right, okay, here you go.
Yeah, you're not going to let a kid loose with real paint necessarily. No. Cool. So I'm happy with that. I think that's got some nice dynamism. And when you're sort of creating work, you might do like motion lines. And so I almost try to think of these lines that I'm doing of colouring as almost motion lines. They're colouring, but they're also motion lines. So I'm going to move on to doing the highlight now. So again, very similar to the shadow. I've got my sort of the highlight base colour, and exactly the same. I'm going to get a bigger brush, big old fat brush, and just block in like this. Hopefully not go too close to the edge. To sort of keep that, that idea
nice.
of
It's really organic, isn't it? Grungy.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
Good and grungy.
Yeah,
grungy
but
brushes.
I do really enjoy the kind of cleaner stuff as well. So there's one of the brushes in the pack is a Smooth Inca 3. That's a personal favourite of mine. That one.
Yeah, you got a load of rough ones, crisp ones, smooth ones. Bristly ones.
Bristly, yeah.
Smooth drag. That looks interesting.
Yeah, that one.
Or a bit of ink spatter as well. I like a bit of ink spatter.
Yeah. The smooth drag one, I was sort of, when you sort of dilute ink a little bit in real life, and it sort of, you don't get a consistent covering. You start to see almost a bit of streaking. And nice. I was keen to try to sort of just ape that, because I always like that effect, that the sort of watered down ink can be really lovely.
Quite organic.
Yeah.
Accidents happen.
That's right. Yeah, I love that stuff. I just think, there's no need to be afraid of those happy accidents. So block all this stuff in. So as you can see, I'm sort of using way more perhaps highlight on the body than shadow.
Jonathan is saying, a great illustration, Tom. Love seeing the process. And I totally agree. I'm just mesmerised by it.
Thank you so much. Sorry, was that Jonathan? Was that?
Jonathan, yes.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan. That's really kind. Much appreciated. Cool. Okay. Just a few bits on his hoodie here. Okay. Yeah, I think that's probably enough. So I'm going to create yet another layer for the highlight rendering. And again, this is just so helpful to have all these different layers, because if I suddenly decided, you know what, I don't like this base color, I can just literally go through and, I'm sure everyone knows this trick, but hold down Command, click on your little thumbnail here, whole thing is selected. And then you can just either change it via the adjustment layers. You might do hue and saturation or channel mixer, or do it by hand. And it's through painful experience of having to go back and redo things. It's always great to kind of give yourself as much help as possible with all this kind of thing.
For sure.
So yeah, same thing. Just feather out these big blocks of color like this.
Beth saying that she struggles with shading and highlights, but she's picking up lots of new tips on these sessions, which is great.
Oh, I'm really pleased to hear that. Yeah, it's such an ongoing process, isn't it? I've still got, I still do tutorials online. I still tune into these because there's always stuff to learn.
Always something. It's never ending.
This is it. Yeah. I've gone a bit too close to the shadow there. It's good to sort of have a bit of a break. So I'm just going to pull back a bit. There we go.
Cool.
Highlight rendering. Make sure I'm terrible for doing that. Going back to another layer and then staying on that layer and undoing everything I've done. So again, trying to just sort of, as I say, be pretentious and sculpt your figure. Use your mark making to sculpt the shape of it and add movement to it. Oh, my computer's breathing heavily. Hopefully it doesn't freeze up on me again. Come on, you can do it. You can do it.
I don't even want to talk about how mine's performing because it scares me. Because as soon as mine's fine.
Yeah, well, this is it. Yeah, don't jinx it.
Skull and Crossbones pops up, launches itself.
It's terrible.
2 days spent rebuilding it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
The usual.
Yeah, I remember back in my early 20s, I was never in the habit of backing anything up. I just had everything saved, and then my whole Mac just completely crashed.
Ouch.
And it was a horrible moment and a valuable life lesson. So I'm a bit obsessive now with kind of backing up to Dropbox and all sorts of stuff. And it's good, because obviously you can keep the different versions as well and go back to, if you think I've got like 3 different versions, it's almost like, what's that function in Apple? Is it the time machine?
Yeah,
and it can kind of save snapshots. I kind of really like that idea. Just to be able to go back and go, hey, yeah, remember last year on a Friday? That was pretty good. I'll go back to that one. I like that. Great. So this is where. So he's moving. This figure is moving from right to left. So using these highlights, now I can really start to sort of show the motion, almost using these as motion lines as well as colouring. And again, just go through, add a few more little hints here and there. Cool. I reckon that'll probably do for that. So I will I'm conscious of time. I don't want to. I hope I'm not boring everyone.
No
I'll
worries.
go in and I'm going to switch to.
I'm fairly mesmerised. I think probably everybody else is as well.
So I'll swing him around, and again, because of he's facing the light, so he's facing downwards. So I'll just grab my skin tone here, and I'll just block in dead quick. And again, because as I mentioned earlier on, I try not to go crazy on the face. Not too much rendering, so I'll just be fairly minimal with the face. Block all that in, and then go up to the hand. And same thing, just big old blob brush like that. Just to save some time. Yeah, if there's anything anyone's wondering, how am I doing that or why am I doing that, please do feel free to ask.
Yeah, we've got some questions.
Oh, cool.
Nestled in the ask a question section, comfortable in there
Excellent.
For the moment.
Just percolating.
Warm and cozy. Having a cup of tea and a biscuit.
Yeah, good. Cool. Just block this in. bad habit of doing that thing where I'll keep my pen on the tablet and colour, and then make a mistake, hit undo, and I'll have to redo
the whole thing
that I've covered. So I have to keep reminding myself to lift the pen.
Just need like a rewind function.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess that would suck even more memory.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's just start rendering like After Effects or something.
Yeah.
But I do think you should patent that idea.
I think so.
And pay, Adobe will pay you some big bucks for that one. Cool. What I'll do just quickly is I'll swap my swatches over. So I just used X to swap my two swatches over here, and just stick it, but just do the white of his eye like that on the same layer. Cool. So yet again, another layer. So I'll do skin, shadow, pick my swatch here. And again, because he's facing the light, you really don't need much. So just a bit sort of up by the hairline here and around the edges of the face. And then it's sort of, just the shape of the face, the contours, the bones, that's what you're sort of looking for. So round by his cheekbone here. Like that, and just underneath. And then kind of sweeping around a little bit under his chin. So pretty minimal, really, and then just thinking about behind the old nostrils there, a little bit there. There we go. And then again, same principle. Just start to, smaller brush and just feather out like that. Try and sort of create marks that are going in line. So I'm doing like kind of curved lines, thinking about, okay, the cheek is obviously a 3D object, so let's try and sculpt use these lines to kind of show that, and that this is a sort of rounded object. Cool. So I'll just go up to the hands, and again, yeah, as I say, I don't want to do too much to the hands, but just a bit. So just a bit on top. Trying to leave a little sliver of, oh, come on. Talk amongst yourselves.
Lights flickering again.
Yeah.
And if you ever saw the film Weird Science, where they use the supercomputer, the two geeky, teenage boys to make the lady, but that's basically what Photoshop's come down to now. When you turn Photoshop on, the lights flicker. And...
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So it's sort of, as I'm zoomed in like this, it looks a bit weird doing these kind of lines on top of his fingers, but hopefully, kind of when you then start to sort of block in on the back of the hand, cool. it hopefully will look a bit more normal. That's the idea anyway. And it's sort of the idea of like a shadow thrown into sharp relief.
And with again, almost like a bit of light wrapping around the...
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And then again, swinging around, make sure you're getting your angles right, and just start.
This is very cool, Tom. You are making this look way, way too easy.
Oh, but thank you so much. That's very kind. Yeah, just a little bit. I've probably gone overboard there with the rendering, but just a wee bit.
Oh yeah, Beth's saying as long as the rocket doesn't come up through the floor, you're having a dove land on it. Bing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Brilliant.
Cool. So we're getting there. I think we're nearly done. But I'll just add a bit more on here. I don't want to keep you guys too long. So again, little bits of rendering, not too much. Just enough to kind of, show the form, the wrinkles of his hands and stuff. Cool. I reckon. Have I missed anything? So again, similar to before, I've done some previous colouring just because we're limited for time. Yeah. But I reckon that's looking pretty good to me. I think that's pretty much finished.
That's brilliant, Tom. That's really cool.
Thank you. What I'll do is I will, just because I've got so many layers here, I will group them all together. So select them all, just hit the little folder button here, and then zoom out. In fact, actually, I will just straighten him up a bit. There we go. I will switch on the rest of the colours. So that's what I did earlier on. So as you can see, I've sort of gone exactly the same principle, thought about how the light is going to hit the folds in the fabric, and then just try and feather it out, and again really give this idea of motion. So this is obviously, it's a static figure, but just these little techniques to say, hey, this is, hopefully you can see the shadow and the light giving the figure some form, but also hopefully dancing across it to show that it's in motion.
Tom, it's really cool.
No,
I absolutely love it. Yeah, it's brilliant.
So what I'll do then, just to finish up, is I will make visible the rest of the figures, so you can see how this kind of fits into the larger whole. So I'll make all those visible, and then add the overlay. I like a nice textured overlay. Nice. So yeah, hopefully you can see that on these other ones as well. I've got the same kind of thing. I've got these sort of rendered lines, giving motion, almost like motion lines. So
it's getting a lot of love. Bill says it looks fantastic. Chris says it looks awesome. JR says it looks gorgeous, and I totally agree. It's really cool. Lovely illustration.
That's really kind, guys. Thank you so much. Just one last thing, and this is where the new brush pack comes into effect. I'll just sort of show you what I did with the illustrations to begin with. So the final illustration, can you see all those sort of hatch lines behind it?
Yeah.
This is kind of what I was talking about in terms of adding motion lines. So all of that is I've held down Shift and kind of done loads and loads of lines using the brushes, because I wanted to show motion lines of the different figures and create almost like a bit of a patchwork behind him, so that each figure, when you stop and look at it, so focusing on the one we've been working on, he's got diagonal lines here to kind of show the way he's been facing. Then the vertical guy, he's got vertical lines behind him, and likewise, so that was all part of, again, just trying to show motion and life and dynamism. But it was time consuming to do that. So when I was actually working, I see this new brush pack as kind of a natural progression, really. So I just create a new layer. And so the new brush pack is called, I'll show you the front cover, the Ultimate Shading Lines Photoshop Brush Pack. So this is my new brush pack, and it's kind of
I like the guys on the front of it.
So it's a shady lineup of these. It's a bit of a terrible pun, but I liked the idea of a kind of usual suspects type lineup of clean brushes, of rough brushes, and then this bruiser here is these roughish brushes.
That's great.
And I kind of really see this as an extension almost as of the Invincible Inker. It's kind of the next logical step, because it's all about saving time, and what I wanted to do. So if I scroll down, and you can see this is a world premiere. No one's ever seen these before. So I will select my gritty lines one. I'll go to my brush settings, go to the texture. So these are all handmade. Well, it's a mix actually. Some of it's handmade, some of it's actually stuff I've done in Illustrator and then ported it over to Photoshop and kind of rasterized it. So it's all bitmap, but some of it originated in Illustrator because I wanted everyone to have a mix, again, like the Invincible Inker, have a mix of clean and rough lines. So I'm just going to whack the scale all the way up to like 300 or so. And then I've got my layer here. And I'll just select like a dark grey. And whereas before I had drawn all of these lines individually, I'll make my brush really big like that. And now I can just brush in like that. Really
very cool.
Just really quickly. The same effects, but I knew when I create these products, I sort of got other ideas as well for new ones as well. I want to save time, and I want to hopefully help people to save some time. So I just hopefully this is going to help people. So I'll go back to my brushes, and each of these sets, so it's 20 sets of 6 brushes. So each set has vertical, horizontal, a grid, 45 degrees, 135 degrees, and a crosshatch. So I'll take my 45 degree one, same principle. I have to put a slightly bigger scale on this one. I'll whack it up to about 400. And then same thing, just brush it in behind him like that. Dead quick, all the way down here. And then lastly, I'll pick my vertical brush and get me scale all the way up to about 300. And then his vertical one, so he's sort of in free fall now, like that. And so, I mean, that's taken me a few seconds, whereas the previous one you know, that took quite a bit of time to do that.
I love it, Tom. Nita says she's loving it.
So hopefully,
Anne says it's so cool. It's really, really cool. And I always geek out of seeing people who are passionate about creating products to help other designers and artists. You know, and basically the products are born quite often from their own work.
Yeah,
you know, from like, I could really do with this when I'm creating my next illustration. I'll just make it, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, completely, and that's the whole reason I made it. So yeah, if you have a look out, if you follow me on Instagram or check out Design Cuts, you know, I'm hoping to be launching in the next few weeks, as I'm just doing some promos and stuff. So Photoshop and Affinity, the files themselves, the brushes themselves are done. Procreate is proving a bit more tricky, and I'm having to do a bit more work on that, but that will be coming out at some point soon. So yeah, just follow me, hopefully, and keep your eyes peeled.
Awesome.
So yeah, I think I've probably gone on way too long. But
do you have time for a few questions?
Yeah, shall I close down, stop sharing my screen?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. I'm sorry if I've gone on too long, guys.
Not at all. No, it's been brilliant. I'm sure everyone agrees. And do give Tom some love in the chat, but everyone has been anyway, so it's not really a question of asking that, because it's been a really, really good session. One of my favorites. It's been really, really good.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks ever so much, Tom. That's a brilliant session, and I hope everyone loved it as much as I did, because I thought that was brilliant.
Well, honestly, I've watched so many of these, so it's amazing to actually be taking part in one. And thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure for me. I'm sorry, Tom, because I got a really good one.
Thank you.
And I hope you're feeling better.
Thank you for everyone who's watched. It really means a lot. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much, Tom. Cheers.
Bye.